I was approached by Rabbi Yaniv, and he asked me, he says, he just got the shul, they renovated. He said, do you want to maybe give a Chaburah, once a week? So I said to him, it's a great idea. It doesn't have to necessarily be me, per se, but I think it's a great idea to build the Mitzvah Hashem where it's not just a Chaburah where some rabbi or some rav walks in here and actually says his Torah, but it's more like Chaburah is where people get involved and they'll be saying their own Chaburahs hopefully, or, obviously in the middle of the particular thing, it's better that we have less talking than more talking, but there'll always be time for questions and answers, and if somebody wants to add, or if somebody wants to speak one week, I want it to be a user-friendly environment where everybody feels connected. There's one person, running the show. I want to tell you a little story about Parsha Hashavua. When I was a little boy, I remember growing up, I was very, the Medrash Says, which is an English book, I was very much into this book. I was 9 years old, 8 years old, I don't recall exactly, but I was very into this book called The Medrash Says. And what really, really, got to me was the fact that we can learn Chumash, we can learn Rashi, we can learn Midrashim, but if we don't have a clear understanding of what's going on in the Parsha, a lot of questions arise. And these are questions that, Chas v'shalom, I don't want to say shake a foundation of a Jewish boy or an adult, but it definitely leaves certain marks on a person where he has doubts, he has certain questions, he doesn't know why certain things took place. So I made it my mission almost growing up to actually delve into the Parsha every week. I really did, whether it was with the Orach Chaim or, like I said, growing up with the Medrash Says. And, it really, really built the foundation. It really built the foundation of my emunah and bitachon b'Hashem. Because not everybody's going to get all the answers. Not all the answers are in front of us. Not always are we capable of knowing all the answers. But, every time you get a question that's answered, it builds your emunah. And there were so many questions. And funny, just last week's Parsha alone, I do recall 2 times when I was at that age, 8, 9 years old, that certain things bothered me in the Parsha. My Rebbe would say certain things. And I always said, come on, really, is that really what happened? Or how did this happen? Or how could it have happened? And going through the Medrash, at that age, even just the Medrash Says, that English book, really, really answered a lot of questions. And it opened up myself to getting more involved in understanding the Parsha. And of course, if you don't understand the Parsha, that's also okay. Because if every letter of the Torah is infinite, and every letter of the Torah, Rabbi Akiva was able to look at a crown of a yud and come up with 36 different interpretations on a crown, on a dot. So add that to the piece attached to that, add that to the letter. Torah is infinite. There's no ends. But every time you get an answer, it definitely builds, in my opinion, your emunah and bitachon. And I think it's just something that we all should actually, get involved in every week, besides all the other learning you do. But I want to tell you a little story, an amazing story that happened with my daughter many years ago. My daughter is 28, so it must have been 13 years ago. 13, she was 15, and she was in a school called TAG. I live in Far Rockaway. And in TAG, in all the girls' schools especially, they give you jobs. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a project. Everybody's head of GO, clubs. They give you just things to keep you busy. Yeshiva Baruch Hashem have a lot of Torah to learn. So even there's no such thing after school. You just continue learning. For girls, it's a little more difficult. So they would give out different kinds of jobs. So my daughter's job actually in this school this is before the iPhone, okay? This is when they had flip phones. And I don't think she had her own either, actually. I'm not sure. Actually, I think she did and I didn't know about it. That could be. But anyway, you have a flip phone, and if somebody, Chas v'shalom, wasn't well, her job was to send the links. I think it was pass it on to 10 people. What's the word? What is it called? The word for it. Anyway, you pass on the links and don't break the chain and make sure everybody gets it. So that was her job. Now, I don't know if that was just pushing her off from doing another job, but that was her job. Whenever somebody wasn't well, she had to be involved in that. Okay, Baruch Hashem, beautiful job. I remember one night, I was sitting at my table. And my daughter's sitting there, she's on her phone, and she's busy, like looking, and she's getting like, I turned to her, I see she's getting like very, tzarudut, we say like very shaken about something. And I said to her, what's going on? She goes, Abba, you're not going to believe what happened. I said, what happened? It's terrible. I go, what happened? She goes, there was a boy in Israel that was taken captive by a bunch of Arabs. Boy taken captive by Arabs, terrible. We have to daven for him. What's his name? Yosef and Rachel. That was his name. So I remember sitting at the table, and I'll be honest with you, my reaction, it's not the right reaction, but I said to myself, deep in my heart, I said, Nebuch, this never turns out well usually. That's what I said to myself, I'm being open with you. I said, this is a Rahmanis, I hate to see what's going to happen. 17-year-old boy taking captive, what could be the ending to this? So I told my daughter, oh, it's terrible, what do you want to do? She goes, we have to send out the links, everyone should say Tehillim. Everyone should say Tehillim. So I said, oh, amazing, it's beautiful. And then I sat down in the dining room table where she was in the living room. And in my mind, I said one kapitel. I'm going to be honest, I had to prepare homework for something, for some class. But in my mind, I'm thinking, this cannot turn out great, in my opinion. Which is not the right attitude, because you have to always have bitachon, and I feel cherv, al tavari shel ben adam, you have to always, Hashem has miracles. People there are miracles. So, anyway, she sends out this link, and within, it's funny, even without the iPhone, you think only with the spread like wildfire. I remember my mother-in-law in Borough Park called me up to say, did you hear? And it wasn't about the news, it wasn't on the radio, it was literally word of mouth. Anyway, so she arranged, my daughter arranged two houses away from me, but I think Rabbi Hecht that lives next door to me, a big Tehillim gathering, and within an hour, they were saying, women were there, they were saying Tehillim. Anyway, my daughter comes back at around, I don't know what time, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and she sits down on the couch feeling, good that Baruch Hashem, they davened enough, but there's never enough tefillos, of course. But, accomplishment that we're davening and we're getting involved. Then she gives out a scream. She says, terrible, this is terrible. How could this happen? Who could be so crazy to do something like this? I'm saying, what happened? She goes, it never happened. There was no Yosef ben Rachel that was captured. Who was it? It was the Parsha of Vayeshev, and Yosef ben Rachel was taken captive by the Arabs. So, what a terrible person, what a crazy man, everyone's davening, and they got people all nervous and scared. And I want to tell you what my reaction was. I was sitting there, and I'm soaking this all in, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy's what he did was godless, was greatness. He was teaching us that to live the Parsha of the week. In that week's Parsha, Yosef is taken captive, so we should feel as if Yosef's taken captive. We have to feel the Parsha of the week. It's not just you walk into shul and you read the Parsha and you go and you Sheni Shlishi and then you just move on. It's not just about reading. The Parsha of the week is the Parsha of that week. That we should look into that Parsha of the week and see where our lives are. What can we? Now, that the next week he was saved, but can you, zoom in to the fact that in that week's Parsha, Yosef's in trouble. And to feel that Yosef's in trouble, and to live that week as if Yosef's in trouble. And that meant living the Parsha of the week. That's called living the Parsha. And I made up my mind. I remember it was like 13 years ago I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself, not just doing the Parsha, but trying to look into the Parsha and see to the best of my ability. I'm not a big gadol, I'm not a big tzaddik, I'm not a chashuv man, but to the best of my ability, can I see myself in my actions, in my doings, in my life? How can I learn something from the Parsha of the week that can motivate me, that can show me how I'm supposed to deal with certain situations? So to me, that was very, very important. Very, very important. So living the Parsha is a very important thing. They actually say a joke over, I remember, that there was an older lady that was in a shul, and every year when she came up to the Parsha, they were reading the Parsha of Yosef, and the selling, she would always be crying for Yosef. Always be crying. Because Emunah Pshuta, she lived the Parsha of the week. This older woman lived the Parsha of the week. One year, she didn't cry. So her friends came over to her and says, Beth, whatever her name, you usually cry when it comes to this section of the Torah that we read about Yosef being sold. So she said, this guy Yosef, every year he gets into the same trouble, and every year he gets out of it. This year I have no rachmanut on him. I have no mercy. He has to learn but basically the Emunah Pshuta of that we as people can understand how this person actually understood what it means living the Parsha of the week. But living the Parsha is a very, very powerful thing, and what we learn from the Parsha, like I said, it's not just about Shnei Mikra, it's not just about the Targum, it's not just about going to shul, it's about implementing, and that could be the reason why, I'm serious, why you have Sheni, Shlish, Shvi'i, Chamishi, and Shvi'i, and Maftir and Shabbos, so that every section has something to do with another day of the week. That's called living the Parsha. So we're up to Parsha Shemos. I want to go back a little bit because if we're going to be doing this every week, I want this to be a continuation of a theme of the Parsha. So I'm going to step back a little bit and talk a little bit about Parsha Shemos and about the Shibud, the slavery, and then we'll move into Vaera a little bit. So in this week's in Parsha Shemos, we know that Klal Yisrael, they started to mingle and they started to get involved with with leaving Goshen. And as the last of the Shvatim passed away, it said that they actually went more into the culture and more involvement into Egyptian society. And Hashem felt that this has to, this can't go on, and he brought the slavery. The lesson obviously is that we as Jews, we sometimes think that when we connect more with the non-Jewish world, that of course you have to be friendly, and of course you have to be menschlich, and of course you have to be respectful. Listen, everybody's created in the image of Hashem, and everyone deserves respect. But when you try to think that, when you think that you're connecting with them and being like them or friendly or showing them you're one of them is going to make them like you more, the Torah teaches us that that's not the case. They actually start to hate you more because Hashem wants us to separate ourselves. We are a holy nation. We are Am Segula, and Hashem wants us to tap into that and to make sure that we don't connect. So the slavery began, and different things that happened in the Parsha I want to discuss. One of the things is Vayelech Ishmi Beis Levi. Paro decreed that all firstborns should be thrown into the Nile, into the river. So Amram, who was the father of Moshe, the father of Miriam, the father of Aaron, he was the Gadol Hadar of the generation. And he decided, Vayelech Ishmi Beis Levi, that what it says that he took Bas Levi, but before that, the Medrash tells us that he actually separated from her. And why did he separate? Because he was, the decree was to throw every firstborn in. So he felt that it's not worth it for the Jewish people to have to suffer where they bring children into the world, and what happens? And then they get thrown in if they're boys into the Nile. So he decreed that everyone should separate from their wives, and being the Gadol Hadar that he was, and people listened, they all separated. Steps up his daughter Miriam, and she tells him, Abba, your decree is worse. Your decree is worse than Paro's, because Paro only decreed on the boys. But your decree is going to stop even the girls from entering the world, which is worse. So what did he do? He said, you're right. And he quickly changed. And it says he took the daughter of Levi, he took her again. To show that, that everyone should remarry their wives again. So the Bali Musa tells us an unbelievable thing, that what made him that gadol? Why is the Torah telling you this story per se? Teach us that the greatness of Amram was he was the Gadol Hadar. Yet his little daughter, who was at the time 5.5, tells him something, and instead of shushing her off, instead of telling her, I'm the Gadol Hadar, let me think about it, it says right away he heard it and he accepted it. Greatness is not ruling, greatness is accepting. Greatness is when you understand that if you did something that maybe was incorrect, even if it's a young girl, even if it's your daughter, but if she says something that's important, I will listen. And what does he do? He remarries everyone remarries their wives. And Moshe is born. Moshe is born 3 months early. She hid him for 3 months. So what does it say? It says that she puts him into the river. Yocheved puts her into the river. The mother puts Moshe into the river. And Batya, the daughter of Paro, is approaching the water. Why is she approaching? Because she's approaching that she was going to be Megayer. She was going to convert. So that's why the word Batya actually is from the word Beis Hashem, that she was actually entering back into the house of Hashem. And she goes to the water and she hears a voice. She actually hears a voice. So Rashi says, the pasuk says, "V'hinei nar boicha," behold, there was a child crying. V'tachma lolav, she had mercy on the child. V'atoima, and she said, "Miyaldei ivrim," that this must be a Jewish child. So Rashi says, "V'hinei nar boicha," there was a youth that was crying. So Rashi is questioning, what is this wording of youth? It should say, "V'hinei tino," "V'hinei yeled." What's the lesson of nar? Nar, by Yosef it says, "V'hu nar," which means more of an older child, not a young baby. So what happens? So Rashi says that Hashem made it kolo kenar, that the voice of this baby should be the sound of what? Should be the sound of a child that's more adult, more of like an adult child. So therefore she will be noticing this and say, whoa, what is that sound? And therefore she will actually go to the basket and actually think about the basket more and put an eye onto what's going on here. So Rashi says it was the sound of a child. The Baal HaTurim says that it wasn't Moshe that was crying. The Baal HaTurim says that it actually was Aaron HaKohen that was standing there that was crying. Where does he know this? So the Baal HaTurim says that the gematria of Nar Boche, Zu Aaron HaKohen. That's what he says. He says that from the gematria of Nar Boche, we see it was Aaron HaKohen. That's what he says. So how does he learn the pasuk? That really, V'hinei Nar Boche, it was Aaron. Vatachmol alav, not on Moshe. She had mercy on him, alav, on the Nar Boche, which was Aaron. Vatomer, and she said, Miyaldei Ivrim Zeh. This must be a Jewish child. That what if another child can cry for his brother like that? It must be a Jewish child. The neshama of another Jew cries to the point that she recognized from his cry that must be a connection, that must be a Jewish connection. And therefore she said from his cry, she realized that this must be a Jewish child. So that's what the Baal HaTurim says. Anyway, Moshe gets saved and he's brought into Paro's palace, which is an incredible thing because Paro thought he would kill the leader of the Jewish people. Not only didn't he kill the leader of the people, but he actually brought him up in his house. So, it says in Yiddish, a mensch tracht, a person thinks, but Gott lacht, but God laughs. It's a famous Yiddish expression. A person can have all the cheshbonos in the world. At the end of the day, atzas Hashem, hisakum, the way Hashem wants something to be done, that's how it gets done. You do your ishtadlus, you do what you have to do, but at the end of the day, you have to rely that Hashem gets things done. And it's unbelievable. He brought up the leader that he tried to destroy. Anyway, so Moshe Rabbeinu escapes Mitzrayim, he runs to Yisro, and what happens? Hashem approaches him at the sneh, we all know, and he tells him, I need you to save my people. I need you to save my Jewish people. I need you to go down to Mitzrayim, and its time has come to save Klal Yisrael, to save the Jewish people. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? He says something unbelievable. He says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how can I go? V'ani aral sfasayim. I have a problem with my talk. I can't talk normally, which to me, growing up, always bothered me. I don't understand. Hashem comes to you and tells you, come take out my people. He obviously picked you because you're that leader. He obviously picked you because he knows you are destined for greatness. So can you imagine somebody calls Hatzalah, somebody's dying, Chas v'shalom, and you say, I can't go because I'm not equipped with talking as a certain way. I don't know, whatever. I mean, you get up and you do, especially if Hashem comes to you and tells you, go and please, help my people. I can't go. Wow, and here else for Sayim. So it always bothered me two things. Number one, why didn't Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu, I get it, you have a Ral Sfasayim, you feel it's not respectful for Paroi, I don't know what the cheshbon is, but I want to tell you, I'll heal you. I'll heal you, you have nothing to worry about. I'll heal you and you'll go. You never find that conversation. Hashem said, mi sampeh. Hashem says, I can do things. He doesn't say, I'll heal you. He doesn't say it to him. And question number two is, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu ever ask to be healed? Moshe should have just said, listen, can you help me out? Fix my mouth and I'll go. You don't find that conversation. So there is a Darshas Haran that actually explains why Hashem never healed him in general. Why didn't Hashem heal him? So it says that in the future, when Moshe speaks, no one should say that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu was listened to, or the reason why Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah, or the reason why they listened to Moshe when they did, is because he was a good orator. He was a good speaker. He knew how to be a good salesman. He knew how to connive. He knew how to finagle. He knew how to talk to people. He was an unbelievable salesman. And therefore, that's the reason why they listened. But why didn't he heal him right away? The question is, why didn't he heal him right away, though? Right? To talk to Paro. That explains why he never healed him later on. Now, I will have to say something about my brother said an amazing thing, actually, in Bechukosai, on why Hashem never healed him. We'll get to that afterwards. But he never healed him according to that. Pshat is that to show, but why didn't Hashem heal him right away? So I saw an unbelievable thing. I forgot who brought it down, but I remember seeing it many years ago, that Hashem was teaching not just Moshe Rabbeinu, but Hashem was teaching the world. That Moshe Rabbeinu's greatest attribute physically was his mouth. That's what he needed the most. Spokesperson, lawyer, giver of the Torah. His whole power was his mouth, his peh. Yet he had a deficiency in the one thing that he needed. He had a deficiency. Yet he became the greatest leader of the world. Nothing should ever hold a person back from becoming who he needs to become by saying, I don't know if I'm smart enough, I don't know if I'm capable, I don't know if I'm strong enough. Whatever it is, everybody knows his own little Yetzer Haras that try to bring him down when he feels he can't accomplish something that's within reach because of that little voice in his head. Moshe Rabbeinu's greatest attribute was his mouth. That was the one thing he was deficient, yet he became the greatest leader of his people. So that explains why Hashem didn't heal Moshe. But the question is, why didn't Moshe ever ask to be healed? Why didn't Moshe ever ask to be healed? So I think Rav Sternbach brings this down in his Moedim, in his Das Torah. He says like this. He says that Moshe Rabbeinu, one of his great midos that he had was Hakaras HaTov. Moshe Rabbeinu was all about Hakaras HaTov, appreciation. We see that by the water. He didn't want to hit the water. Why? Because it saved him. By the Makas Dam, he didn't want to hit the water because the water saved him, right? He was afloat. I actually wanted to add to that. Actually, the water did not save him, actually. The water was his enemy, actually. The water was trying to get him. The basket saved him from the water. But the fact that it floated, that saved him, the Hakaras HaTov. I'm not going to hit the water. The water was not his friend. He was in the basket in spite of the water. But the fact that the basket was able to float on that water, Hakaras HaTov. By Makas Kinim, by the lice. He didn't want to hit the lice. Why? To do the Makkah. Why? Because it saved him. When did it save him? By when the Mitzri was swallowed up, that he killed, it saved him. I'm not going to hit. These are things that are not human. They're not even human. There's no brain. There's not thinking. But could you imagine, Chaim Shmulevitz says this, could you imagine if you have Hakaras HaTov for objects that are not even alive? Could you imagine the Hakaras HaTov a person should have for living things, for people? If you can have Hakaras HaTov for something that doesn't even think, but I want to show appreciation to the thing, Hashem created it helped me, I'm going to show appreciation to that thing that was created. So he didn't hit Kinim, right? So again, when the Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, what happened? Everybody was busy collecting the spoils of the land, and he was busy with Atzmos Yosef. Why? Hakaras HaTov to Yosef. Appreciation for what he did. He's it was a certain love of appreciation. It wasn't just a promise that was made by Klal Yisrael, because somebody else could have done it. But he felt, I want to show my Hakaras HaTov, and he did it. And many other places it's brought down as Hakaras HaTov. And here, Moshe Rabbeinu had a kvad peh. But why did Moshe Rabbeinu have a kvad peh? Moshe Rabbeinu had a kvad peh because when he was a little baby, he was sitting on Paro's lap, and instead of taking the diamond, the Malach came and pushed his hand, and he took the coal, and he burnt his mouth. So Hashem saved him. Moshe never wanted for one moment that he spoke, that there should never be that aspect of Hakaras HaTov. He never wanted to have that inyan of Hakaras HaTov leave him even for a second. Therefore, he never ask that his mouth should be healed because he never wanted the fact that he had appreciation that Hashem saved him to ever leave. So we see a tremendous amount of Hakaras HaTov that Moshe Rabbeinu had. And therefore Hashem never asked, never told him, and Moshe never asked. But I want to discuss something that, remember I mentioned in the beginning, there was always one thing that always bothered me when I was a little boy, and I remember when I said, reading the Medrash says, I saw that answer in the Medrash says, it always bothered me why Shevet Levi never had to do work. It never always bothered me. First, besides Moshe Rabbeinu always going into Mitzrayim to Paro should have killed him right away. Obviously, there was a certain koach, a shield that Hashem protected Moshe Rabbeinu every time he walked into Paro, because it should have been over right away. But the part is they couldn't stop him. They either became blind. I think the Medrash says that anyone that tried to touch him got killed. So they obviously couldn't do that. But anyway, so Moshe Rabbeinu, it always bothered me why Shevet Levi never had to do avodah, why they never had to do work. Yes?
I'd like to say as a Levi, it never bothered me.
What?
As a Levi, it never bothered me.
You know that they were never slaves. You know that, right? So the famous question is, if they were never slaves, why do they even say the Haggadah Shel Pesach? If they were never slaves, why does the Shevet Levi have to say the Haggadah?
Because the lower brother's pain.
Okay, so not only did Shevet Levi not have to avoda, but when we break the three matzos, the middle one that we break is Shevet Levi, which is avoda. We want to show the slavery, we break the middle matzah. Levi actually was not even in the slavery. But it bothered me was, how come they never were slaves? It always bothered me. I remember learning that how did Paro even get the Jews to be slaves? How did he get Bnei Yisrael to be slaves? he made deals. He said, guys, come out of Goshen. I'll give you architecture. I'll give you real estate. You'll build for me. And he was paying them lots of money. Shevet Levi said, we're not interested in the money. We're not interested in the money. We want to learn Torah. We're not interested in the money. What we're going to do is we're going to sit in Goshen. We're going to learn Torah. We're not interested in the Olam Haza. We want Olam Haba. We're not interested. So what happened? So Paro decreed, he gave them avodah, he gave them work, he paid them. Then little by little he stopped paying them. And he owed them money, and little by little he enslaved them slowly. Little by little, tichpadu ha'avoda ala anashim was slowly, it happened in levels. It happened in levels where once they were already working for free, as a Rebbe, I can attest. I remember times that I didn't always get paid, and when you still keep coming for the right reasons, obviously. But once you're there, you say, "What's another week and not getting paid on time? What's another week?" And you just get it's a mindset where you're already involved in not getting paid, so they know it already. It's that one guy that makes a macha that actually does get paid at the end, by the way. But anyway, so what happened? So how did he get them? So Shevet Levi says, we don't want the money. We want to learn Torah. Then he got them all enslaved. So therefore, Shevet Levi never fell for the trick. If they never fell for the trick, that's it, right? But it always bothers me. Why didn't Paro just get up and say, listen, guys, Shevet Levi, guys are fantastic. Great job. You didn't fall for the trick. Now get to work. He never made them work afterwards. Just because they didn't fall for his trick, that's why they didn't have to work for 200 and something amount of years when they started, 100 years that they were actually enslaved before the whole story took place. So what actually happened here? So I remember in the bottom of the Medrash says, little stars, everyone should get the Medrash, says, little bottom of the star, it says over there what happened. Paro was very superstitious. Paro was worried about the other gods of the world. In Egypt, especially in those days, superstition was huge. People were scared of God. You could hate the God, you could not worship him, you can despise him, but you're still scared. Paro was scared of the gods. And it's brought down, there were laws in Egypt that said all people that are clergy, all priests, clergymen, people of the gods, do not have to pay taxes, they don't have to work. It was a superstitious thing. So Paro did not know who the clergy of the Jewish people were. He didn't know who the rabbis were, but he put two and two together. If Shevet Levi were the people that never actually came to work, they wanted to learn Torah, they must be the rabbis. And if they're the rabbis, they're patur, they're exempt from having to do slavery. So therefore the Torah was Megan, protected Shevet Levi, that they didn't go for the money, they didn't go for the wealth, they didn't go for all the, wow, we're going to be wealthy, we're going to be rich. And what? They rather sit and learn Torah, and therefore their Torah protected them for all the years of the slavery. So that's why they were never slaves. So back to the question that why do they even,
I want to ask something about Yisrael, Levi, and Cohen.
Okay.
The general assumption is that Cohen is more holy than Levi. So my question is that why is it that the Levi were enslaved, but they were still allowed to go back to learn Torah when the Cohen are more holy?
Well, there was no Cohen at the time. Shevet Levi the Kohanim came from Shevet Levi, but there were no Kohanim. Shevet Levi, that's all it was.
So Yisrael, Levi, and...
No, there was the Jewish people. Shevet Levi was called Shevet Levi, but they weren't given the power of Shevet Levi yet. They weren't given the kahuna. They were not giving that. They were later on when they left Mitzrayim, where they given Hashem gave that Kohen should do avoda and Levi should do work. Otherwise, they were regular people. It's just that Shevet Levi actually were more spiritual in their learning at the time. So what happened? So Shevet Levi never. So why do they even say the Haggadah at all? So in the back, somebody answered that. There's physical suffering and then there's spiritual suffering. But most importantly is when you see your own brother suffering, if you're on a high enough level, watching your brother struggle physically, whatever he's struggling with, is your personal pain. It's as if you were enslaved. So the Shevet Levi watching Klal Yisrael enslaved, they felt as if they were enslaved. They actually, Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, when he walked out of Pharaoh's palace the first time when he was 17 years old, and he went out to see, it says, the pasuk says, to see the suffering of his people, he took the yokes of the brothers and he tried to put them on his own shoulders to say, please, I wish I could do this for you, you wouldn't have to do this. a person, a Klal Yisrael has that midah, that they care for each other, and on the perfect level where your pain is somebody else's pain. So in essence, they were enslaved by watching their brothers enslaved. And sometimes that's even more. Believe it or not, when somebody, God forbid, gets sick, chas v'shalom, the person that's sick is not as scared sometimes as much as the people watching the person. There is a protection that Hashem gives. That's the truth. I know people that have a certain disease, and and I see their families are losing it. And then when I meet the guy, he's okay. He's okay. It's almost like Hashem gives a certain gift to the person that he can handle a certain sorrow, but the other people don't have that sorrow, so they don't get that gift. Their job is to understand that gift, but they don't have it. So sometimes actually watching the pain is greater than the actual pain itself. So this is something that I wanted to mention, that you go through the Parsha, there's so many questions that could be asked, and it's up to us to actually, the best of our ability, to actually see and to work on the Parsha, to see what we can learn from the Parsha, to see what we can internalize in our own personal lives. I don't expect anybody to do the Goyrel Hagra and to open up to a sefer and say, should I do this business $10 million deal today and open it up? Listen, you have a better chance than if you thought of it on your own. But I will tell you that, every human being should really try to learn the Parsha more. And I appreciate you coming today. And I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos, and thank you for coming.